part of the system for performance consideration only read the value at initialization and don't read it later on. So even if you change it, they won't read it again. And spawners are very much like that. For a long time, they would not reread anything at all. Now they are a bit more smart in the sense, like for example, if you have like a list or if you have a random with a tilde in their values, they know that this value will be changed every time you call get on it. So they will actually try to read it every time they need it. But I don't know if the wave delay is part of it. So let's actually check that. Because I haven't.
So with your the purple spawner there, it would be interesting to either slow down the frequency of the objects being created there, or
totally, totally. Let's actually check when it's red. So there's set wave delay. Who's calling that? So here we fetch the value from the config. And this function is called process config data, and this function is called only if the file has been changed on disk. So if you are in debug modes and you want to change the file, when you save the file, it will be reloaded and the actual spawner will be reprocessed, but that's not what you want. It's just for development purposes. Right now, otherwise it's only done at initialization. And if I'm looking for get floats, here we get the delays, the rotation, the object, and let's see, where are we right now? That's a process config, that's the rotation, the scale, oh, the delay, there, random wave delay, yes, that's it. So if you want it to be reread every time, it will only do it if it was a random at first. So is looking at first it's calling is dynamic value. Is dynamic value will tell you if that value is bound to change over time because it's not just a plain integer or a plain float. So what is dynamic value do is it's going to check for the flag if it's a list or a random value. So in both cases it will actually say the value is dynamic, so reread it every time you need it. Like for example, here that's the function process config data. That's not the one I want right now. It's to see this flag here. This flag here, it's probably when we spawn. So here in the spawn internal, when we're done spawning, if the delay, the wave size or the wave delay are flagged as being random values, is going to reread them. Otherwise, it would just ignore them for performances. So if you want to actually do that over time, what you can do is for I don't have an automatic spawner, but let's see. Do I have a delay? I don't think I have one. Oh yeah, wave delay, yeah. So here, if I wanted it to be dynamic, for example, I could make it a list with the same value at initialization. So when the spawner will be created, it will see a list, even if it's twice the same value, it will think that it can be dynamic and it will reread it every time it needs it. So if you change it at runtime later on, it will actually pick it. Another way would be to put a random like this, same thing. Because it's a random, it knows, oh, it's a random value, I need to read it every time I need it, so it's going to read. I guess we could add like a property saying that either no caching or reload every time or whatever. We can add a boolean saying that this spawner needs to be reread already, and not just rely on the fact that the value is dynamic or not. But right now that's the case. Objects are reread all the time, but
so what you're typing there looks like you can do a list on a. So I didn't know that you could do a list on something that took a float.
Yes. You can do list everywhere. It's just that any value that
becomes a random, doesn't it?
Exactly. So that's very handy because whenever you need a random, you just have to put a list. Actually, it's a discrete random. So anything that does not expect a list, if you feed it a list, it won't know it's a list. It will just get one random value out of the list every time, and it's automatic. So it works for anything. Like for here, for example, like the lifetime of my particle, I can put like a random between 2, 3, and like say 10 seconds. And when I'm going to spawn my particles, you'll see that some particles will last much longer than others. Oh yeah, I need probably to reload actually. And I'm not sure which particle I changed. Oops. Not sure what happened there. Oh yes, I know why. That was an unfortunate example. Yes, because I'm using that that lifetime later on for a shader to get the value, and if I put a list here, it's not going to work. I'm using add lifetime for things and for a shader later on, so that's not a good example. So let's just pick something else. Like here, for example, the spawner.
Okay.
In the object, it will usually just take one one object. Like for example, my spawner will spawn balls. I'm not sure what's going on there. Did I change something else? There. It's the issue with live streams. There. So here it only spawn balls and no text, as you can see. Because the spawner, every time it spawns, it asks, okay, what is my object? My object is a ball. So you get a ball. Now if I go here and I see there's also text, when I spawn things, and you see, by the way, because the file was saved on disk, it was picked, and because I'm in debug, it was picked by the engine, it was reloaded and reprocessed. So now I actually have the ball and the text. And same thing, if I go here and I remove the ball and just keep the text, I saved, it has been picked by Orcs right away, and now I'm just putting text and no balls at all. There. So basically here it expects just one value, but because we feed it a list, it will pick a random value out of it. And you can also control, like for example, the proportion of things. Like for example, if I want 3 times more ball than text, I can put like 3 ball, 1 text, and I'm more likely to spawn balls than text. So I will see many more balls than actually see text. That's just one way of doing it. So yeah, you can put list anywhere where you expect even single values. So that's very convenient for adding variety.
I often
Yeah.
want to spawn different things.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't known how to deal with that. Yeah, so that's great.
Yeah, that's definitely very handy. So here the variation I could have done, if I wanted only visual variation, I could have done it on the ball itself. Like for example, let's say we only spawn balls. Oops. Where is, oh, I saw my window. Not going to work. There we go. So I'm only spawning balls. But now let's say that I have a ball graphic somewhere. Oh yeah, it's in different files, doesn't matter. So we're going to, I think I have a file called tux. Yeah. So because Orcs also support the WebP format, here I'm going to call, to use the tux WebP file. Here I'm going to call like tux graphic, for example. Tux graphic with a texture which is tux WebP. And here I want to remove this. There we go. Did I? There, so yeah. So we have a text graphic now. So here, for example, the ball itself is only spawn, and if I add ball, and if I say that the graphic of the ball could either be ball graphic or tux graphic. And I just hope that I didn't override it later on. No, I did not. So now I should have like sometimes text and sometimes balls. But it's the same object, it's only the graphic that has changed. So as you can see, the graphic has changed. And by the way, now if we say set debug show physics, we should see that that's set physics show debug. I'm a bit tired. There we go. You can see that it will adapt to the size of the actual graphic, so that the balls have tiny collision spheres, whereas the tux has big ones. But here we only change the graphics of it. So now we're going to put it back the way it was. So now we only have like balls.
No, you could do that.
And I'm going to remove the debug. There we go. We only have balls. But now if I want to different objects, let's say because maybe they behave differently, they have like different physics or different code behind the scene or things like this. And now I want like ball and tux. So I can create a tux object whose graphic is tux graphic. And now it's actually going to create two different kind of objects, the tux one and the ball. And you can see that they don't behave the same way because the tux is just a plain object that has no lifetime, nothing, and it will remain here forever. It has no physics, whereas the balls are actually bouncing and they have a lifetime. So the spawner can spawn a lot of different kind of object. And that list can be changed on at runtime as well. Right now I'm spawning half tux and half balls, but if I, for example, if I change it at runtime, I set ball spawners object, and I only want to spawn text, for example, and now I'm only spawning text, so I can change it from the console itself without having to change it on the file. And that will work even in release when we are not monitoring for disk file changes. So you can modify any values really, like for example the text that is been spawned. You can see that the ball text, the string is also a list, so it will be random. So sometimes it will be arc, sometimes it will be lorem sum, sometimes it will bounce, sometimes it will be ball. And we can retrieve that list here. If we do ball text string, so if we do it like this, it will send it randomly a value, or we can give it an index to get exactly the one we want. And we can actually set it. So if I want to set ball text, and let's put this is my new text. Now I forgot to put the key, which is string. Set ball text string. This is my new text. Now when I'm going to spawn text, it actually says this is my new text. So all the config values can be changed at runtime. There are nothing special. Just the thing that some systems are going to read them, or some systems are just going to read them once at init. Some systems are going to read them every frame, like the render of the FPS or the render of the physics debug and things like this. Whereas when an object is created, the object is created and is not going to reread the config again unless poked by the watcher from the disk in development mode. So let's remove those tags because there's a lot of them. And so yeah, that's another thing here. For example, I forgot to change it on the config. Let's go back there. So sometimes you want to do like a quick test of something you haven't set up in config. Like for example, if I want to test the music, I can do it entirely from the console. I would say set, I don't know, I like calling my object Toto. I think, yeah, I've been told it's a French thing to do that, so maybe Nico can confirm on that. So set Toto, and I will say that Toto has sound list, and it's itself. So I'm going to put arrow base here at, and now I'm going to set Toto. I'm going to set a music, so it will be a stream, and I will call it. It is a French thing, so yeah, Nico is confirming. Music, I'm going to call it tbloop.ogg, which is a file I have on disk. So I created a config section called Toto, and the sound list now is itself, and the music is gbloop.org, and I'm going to set Toto. I'm going to set loop at true, and now I'm going to create that object that I call Toto that does not exist in config anywhere on file. And there's music, and I'm going to delete it because it's loud. There. Sorry for the loud music. I think my volume is a bit higher. So yeah, so basically you can create things on the fly or modify on the fly and test them without having to actually write down, reload, or whatever. You can really do dynamic things. Yeah?
A question of something I'd love to be able to do with the console, and I don't know if it's possible. Say, your ship is on screen, and you might have, several enemies that were created, like maybe 5 were created in a loop. So you have 5 enemies, you have 1 ship on the screen. Now, how is it possible to use the